Last year, Father's Day started out as usual. I always woke up first. I never got a good night's sleep, so I knew it would be quite a while before my 18-year-old wife and my 18 and 17-year-old girls would wake up and join me. Every year, for Mother's Day, I made my wife a nice breakfast of mimosas. For lunch, I would make her a cheese plate with cheese, fruit, and nuts, and a bottle of good white wine. For dinner, I would make her favorite grilled steak and baked potatoes paired with a nice Cabernet Sauvignon. When the girls were younger, they helped with breakfast and the obligatory waiting on Mom. But as they got older, I was left alone with the pampering. It wasn't a big deal. My wife usually reciprocated by making me a special breakfast for Father's Day, although I grilled steaks for dinner. So, last year on Father's Day, I waited for my wife to wake up to make me breakfast, which never happened on any other day of the year. She doesn't know it, but I usually eat something small when I wake up around 6. I'd starve to death if I didn't eat until she wakes up around 9, which is early for her on the weekend. When she woke up, she kissed me, wished me happy Father's Day, and started making a special breakfast for the family. For lunch, we went to a kitschy little cafe with Doctor Who-themed sandwiches, and overall, it was a good day. My wife is a slave to the calendar and knows when all the important dates fall. She manages everything from holidays to the kids' activities with a dry erased calendar hanging on the side of the cabinet in the kitchen. All holidays, milestones, school events, half-days, etc. are written on the calendar. Nothing is ever missed, except when I miss something, of course. The following year, when my wife was putting the dates on the calendar at the end of May, she said, "Hey, Bill, your birthday falls on Father's Day this year." It wasn't the first time, so I wasn't surprised. I replied, "Great. Don't save money and trick me into not getting 2 presents." Kathy replied with a laugh, "You won't survive if you get cheated out of a gift. I'm going to have to do something special for you this year." Next chapter. The weeks leading up to my big day were strange in our home. My wife was acting strange, working late, snapping at me and the girls over little things, and getting dressed for work more often. She worked as a bakery manager at our local grocery store. She had never worn makeup before, but around this time, she started doing it. She also wore a scarf over her clothes, which consisted of a white button-down shirt and pants. Sand, I started to have my doubts when on the Friday before my birthday, she went out without me. We went out quite often with the main group of married couples, so she rarely went out with the girls alone. If someone was going out for drinks and invited her along, she'd let me know the place and I'd meet her. It wasn't like I was an ogre and wouldn't let her do anything alone. She always said she enjoyed her time more if I was with her. It made me feel good. And I thought our marriage was pretty strong because of little things like that. For my part, I didn't do much without her outside of our social circle either. That was fine with us. We weren't party people or big drinkers. Our idea of a nice Friday night was just hanging out on the couch together and watching a couple of movies. That's why I was surprised to see her coming down the stairs that Friday, dressed to the hilt. I whistled at her and asked, "Damn, honey, did I forget that we're going out? Let me get dressed real quick." "No, Bill, I'm going with a few people from work. I thought you could order a pizza for yourself since our girls are going out too." I was shocked. She'd never mentioned it, and it wasn't on her precious calendar. "Huh? You didn't tell me you had plans. I thought we'd finish our shows tonight." A look of fear appeared on her beautiful face, but then she mastered herself and softened. "I'm sorry, baby. I was just asked today." I let her know I was looking at her upside down and said, "So you just found out today, and in the hour you were at work before me, you bought a new skirt, went tanning, and got your hair done?" I was starting to get angry. She was lying to me, but I couldn't prove it. I couldn't believe she could cheat on me. It was out of character for her. She was the epitome of a suburban soccer mom's wife and mother. Our life was wonderful. She had no reason to cheat on me. She gushed at me. I worked half a day today. I wanted to look nice for a change. Before I could respond, she was out the door without another word, leaving me wondering what the hell had happened. I waited for her, and she came home just before midnight. Her hair was no longer lying down, but was gathered into a regular ponytail. So much for the hairstyle. She walked past me without saying a word and went upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I just shook my head, wondering what she had done that she had to shower before bed. She didn't come downstairs and say goodnight to me before going to bed. I realized something was wrong in my perfect world and wondered how wrong. I worked in the retail industry, so I was at work on Saturday morning. Usually, as I was getting ready for work, I would wake her up and she would kiss me goodbye before going back to bed. That morning, I got nothing. Once again, I was shocked. When I got to the store, I saw Missy waiting for me at the front door. Missy was the morning barista at our big store's coffee shop. She was a pretty red-haired girl whose blue eyes were striking. As happily married as I was, I couldn't help but take notice of her. I'd always liked redheads. "Hey, Bill," she called out as I approached the entrance. It was still locked as it was a half hour before the store opened. The night crew guys could let her in, but as she'd told me once before, she wasn't comfortable alone in a store with a bunch of guys. "Good morning, Missy," I said as I opened the doors in front of us. "What's wrong, Bill? You look like someone killed your cat." "Sorry, I've got a lot on my mind today." She gave me a strange look but remained silent. "Give me a few minutes and I'll pour you a cup of our best." I smiled forcibly and said, "Sounds good, I'll see you soon." I closed the doors as she hurried to get the cafe ready for the morning rush. I knew she would be very busy once the store opened. Our little cafe was always crowded in the mornings. As I walked around the floor, I would check on the work crews getting their departments ready. I always did an audit in the morning. It wasn't necessary as I had a very good team of department managers, but it gave me a chance to say hello and make small talk. I felt it was important to maintain a good relationship with my team members, and I think they appreciated my efforts. The last stop on my walk was the coffee shop where Missy had my large black coffee waiting for me. "Here you go, boss. 1 cup of the best kind from Megamart." "Thanks, Missy. I put $2 on the counter." "No, Bill. It's on the house tonight." "No way, Missy. I pay for everything here. The last thing I need is someone getting mad at me and calling corporate to report me." She sighed. "Bill, I would never. I didn't mean you, Missy. I can't risk it, even for a $2 coffee. You'd be surprised at the things I have to put up with if I deny someone a day off or cut over time. It's just not reasonable." "Okay, boss. Fair enough." I waved goodbye and sipped my beer. I'm sure some employees get free coffee from time to time. There's no way to track it, and who needs to? Too much work because of cheap coffee. I can't imagine spending hours watching videos to make sure everyone paid. It was different for me. Being in charge of a company was also a risk. Employees would lose their temper over the dumbest things. I was approached by HR because I was enforcing employee parking rules. Seriously, calling HR because you have to park in your backyard? Ridiculous. The day ended and went pretty smoothly. The thing that excited me the most was the old lady who stole the cat food and bird food. It was exactly the kind of day I needed. I was busy enough not to ruminate on my new problems with my wife, but not so busy that I couldn't get things done in time. When I walked through the door of the house, my wife and daughters were already coming out of there. I was surprised for a moment, but looked at the calendar. "By Daddy," each of my daughters said as they kissed me on the cheek goodbye. My loving wife said nothing. They were going to a concert with other moms and daughters. It had been planned a long time ago and was on the calendar, but I, as usual, forgot, and I was hoping I would have a chance to talk to Kathy and figure out what was going on. I hated not knowing what she had been up to the night before. After not thinking about it all day, there was nothing left for me to do but pondered in the evening. I took the opportunity to poke around a bit. I checked her email but figured it wouldn't work, and it did. No one else was sending emails. She had her phone, so I couldn't check her messages or call log. I went to the laundry basket to check her clothes from the evening, but since it was Saturday, she had already done her laundry. I didn't get anything done, and after watching a movie, I went to bed feeling no better than before. I woke up on my birthday, Father's Day, and started the day as usual. I ate a couple pieces of toast, drank my coffee, and sat on the patio to enjoy the morning. The day was gorgeous. I enjoyed the birds chirping and contemplated what this special day had in store for me. Around 9, I went inside to refill my coffee and was surprised to see that my wife and daughters were already up and packing lunch. "What's going on?" I asked, wondering why they didn't make me get ready to go out. My daughter Jill replied, "We're going to the beach." "Oh," I said, and went upstairs to get dressed for the lake. As I was putting on my shirt, I heard my daughter Jenny yell out, "Bye, Daddy, see you later." The door slammed shut and I looked out the window to see my wife and daughters driving away. I couldn't believe it. I didn't expect the girls to remember my birthday. I had to remind them of their mother's birthday and Mother's Day, but I couldn't understand why Katie didn't remember. I walked down the stairs and heard my cell phone ring. I rushed over there, hoping they understood and were going to tell me they were coming back for me. But no, it was my mom. "Hey, Billy, happy birthday and Father's Day." "Thanks, Mom. Does Kathy have big plans for you guys today?" "No, she took the girls to the beach a few minutes ago." "Really? That's not like her. I'd bet she'll make you a nice breakfast and make this day special for you." "Yeah, I honestly don't know what's going on right now. She's been acting weird for weeks now." "Well, don't fuss. She probably has something special planned for later. I've got to get to church." "Love you, Billy. Love you, Mom." My mom was to be loved. She was an eternal optimist and loved Kathy as if she were her own flesh and blood. She and Kathy had visited each other regularly since my father had died a few years before. Kathy wanted to make sure Mom wasn't too lonely. Men up, so I was standing there wondering what the hell was going on with my marriage when the phone rang again. It was my assistant manager, Anne. "Bill, we had an incident at the coffee shop this morning." "What happened?" "Missy was on the stairs when she was pushed by a customer. She lost her balance and fell." "Oh my God, is she okay?" "They took her to St. Alex's Hospital to get x-rays. She might have a broken arm or something." "Shit, that poor girl. Have you been switched?" "Yeah, we're all set. I just didn't want you to catch me off guard tomorrow. I'm sorry I bothered you on Father's Day." "Don't worry about it, Anne. Thanks for calling. I hoped Missy would be okay." I fiddled around the house for a while and, figuring they weren't coming back, headed to IHOP for breakfast. That turned out to be a mistake for my state of mind. I had to wait a long time, and everywhere I looked, there were families. Happy families celebrating fathers and grandfathers. I left before I started crying. I made my way through McDonald's and got a big breakfast of coffee and orange juice. The pancakes were surprisingly good as I sat in the park and ate with a plastic fork and knife. Edited, I looked out at the little lake I used to take my girls boating on when they were little. They loved the water. Whether it was swimming, boating, or even fishing, they loved being on the lake. As they got older and almost started college, they lost interest in fishing and looking back. I think they lost interest in spending time with me at all. In those days, all their outings were with their mother. Probably the right thing to do. Shopping for clothes with their father, I'm sure, would have been burdensome for a young girl. At 1 o'clock, there was no word from my wife. I could only assume there would be no lunch together. I drove to the Doctor Who cafe and ordered a Reuben. Surely the name was related to the TV series Reuben's Dalek Revolution or something equally silly. Being a 40-year-old man who has no idea what's cool and what's not, I took a picture and registered on Facebook. I got the usual likes and comments wishing me a happy Father's Day from my friends and acquaintances. Oddly, my mother-in-law commented that she thought it looked like I was at the beach with my wife and girls. Apparently, my wife was posting beach pictures on her Facebook page. I finished my sandwich and headed to a sports bar near the house. I hadn't watched a ball game in a while and decided to drown my sorrows in Miller Lite. The bar was crowded and I wasn't in the mood for it, so I headed to the cigar lounge next door and treated myself to a $60 Opus X. Happy birthday to me. I sat down at the table and turned on the Sox game, and a couple of guys playing cards invited me to join them. "I'm Bill," I said, introducing myself to the older gentleman. "I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry. Nice to meet you both." They finished dealing and invited me into their little 5-card game. "Help yourself, Bill," Lance said, setting the cooler on the floor. I thanked him and pulled out a Miller Lite. "No kids? Or did the ex have them with a new man?" asked Jerry with a smirk. I frowned and replied, "My wife and girls are at the beach right now. They don't seem to know what day it is." "Sucks," Lance added. "I don't see my boys much. Both are serving." Jerry nodded and said, "My baby girl lives in California. My grandson Charlie just turned 2. I'm going there next week." "That's great," I said. With my girls turning 17 and 18, I was starting to miss the little ones running around. They both nodded understandingly. After some time of small talk, we somehow got back to the subject of my wife. "Do you think she's really oblivious, or is she avoiding you on purpose?" Jerry asked. Asked Jerry. It was a great question that I was pondering as well. I told them about the past few weeks, up to and including Friday's problems, and they shook their heads. "She's cheating on you," Lance said. Jerry nodded in agreement. I can't believe it, I said. But as soon as he said it, I realized it was the only explanation that made sense, and I tried to believe it wasn't true. Listen, Bill, Lance said, I've been through this before. The changes in behavior, the sudden nighttime trips and slut clothes, the disrespect. I've been there and done that, buddy. My wife had fun with a coworker a couple times, and when I found out about it, I divorced her. Biggest mistake of my life. What snapped back at me? She cheated on you. How can divorcing her be a mistake? In my opinion, there was no excuse. Cheating is the end of a marriage, plain and simple, period, end of story. Bill, I've been broke for 5 years paying her alimony and child support. I missed her every damn day, loving her across town in my lonely apartment while she was lonely in my house. She may have cheated on me, but I was too big of a woos to forgive her at the time. It's been 7 years, but we got back together when I pulled my head out of my ass. We're happy now. Jesus, I said. Giving her body to another man is the biggest insult and disrespect my wife could ever commit. If what you say is true and she's having an affair, then she's either so involved with her lover that she's forgotten my birthday or she's blowing me off on purpose. Either of those options is unacceptable. Lance shook his head. Bill, trust me. If you really love her, find a way to forgive her. You'll be better off in the long run. 40-year-old guys don't get second chances at love. Thank you, Lance. You've given me a lot of food for thought. I might have said that, but what I was really thinking was that he was crazy. There was no way I could forgive her for cheating on me and no way I could stay married to her. I shook both men's hands, wished them well, and left. As I sat on the couch and browsed Facebook, it was almost dinner time. I saw my daughter's and wife's posts with pictures of their happy day and was saddened even more. Screw it, I thought to myself. I need to pull myself together and stop acting like a lost child. My wife forgot my birthday. It happens. She forgot Father's Day. What's the difference? What mattered was that I was sure she had cheated on me on Friday night and probably many times in the previous weeks she had acted strangely. And the fact that she was rubbing it in my face had to be her ultimate goal. Well, she finished it off nicely. It was time to get ready for the rest of my life. I decided to go out to dinner at my favorite restaurant. I knew it would be a long wait, and that was okay. I didn't have anything else to do, so I showered, got dressed in my sport coat and pants, and headed out to get a steak. I was sitting at the bar of the steakhouse waiting for a table when an older man sat down in the empty seat next to me. He saw my bottle of champagne with one glass and frowned. Thankfully, he didn't say anything and just ordered a martini. When the bartender filled my glass, the man apparently couldn't help himself and asked, "Are you celebrating alone, or did I take someone else's place?" "No," I replied. "That's okay, I'm here alone." He nodded and took a sip. He must have been in sales because he couldn't sit still. He said, "Yes, I'm waiting for my 3 generations of red rage. My wife is helping my daughter who broke her arm today. I guess she doesn't take well to having to do everything with her left hand." He laughed and continued, "You just don't expect your grown children to break bones." I thought those days were behind us. I agreed with his opinion and nodded. Looks like I'll be cooking on my own for a few weeks. My wife will have to take care of Missy and Mia and leave me alone. I popped my head up. "What did you say?" Before he could answer, a little girl shrilled Grandpa from across the room and darted across the crowded bar. The little ball of red curls jumped into his lap and showered the man with hugs and kisses. A moment later, I heard Bill. I turned and saw Missy, and what I assumed was her mother standing next to me. Her mother was a complete replica of her. Except for a few wrinkles around her eyes, they looked exactly alike. "Hi, Missy, how's your arm?" "It's fine. I'm on strong painkillers so I can hardly feel anything, but it hurt like hell when they were setting it right." Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and then her adorable little girl, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" she asked. "I don't know. She took my girls to the beach this morning and I haven't heard from them all day." "Really? On Father's Day?" "Worse. It's also my birthday today." "Oh my God, she blew you off on the best day of the year for you? What's her problem?" And I didn't want to get into it and say more than I probably should have already, so I shrugged. "Well, forget about her." "You should join us," Mary said firmly. I realized what Jack meant about the red rage. "I don't forget about it, Bill. You don't want them to militia on you. It's not nice," Jack said with a chuckle that indicated his years of experience militiaing on them. "But it's your day, Jack. I don't want to get involved." Bullshit, he said. It's our day. Grandpa, you said I know pumpkin. I said a bad word. Grandma's going to punish me later. Daddy, he winked at me as their table's buzzer sounded. Pay up, Bill, and meet us at our table. No payoff, he said, in the tone of a drill instructor. He tossed a 20 on the counter and walked away. Sorry, Bill. My parents can be thick-headed. Don't worry, Missy. I suppose it's better than eating alone. Conversation over dinner was light. Bill and I told stories about our daughters growing up, and Mia asked lots of questions. She kept giggling at the awkward stories about her mom as a child. After dinner, my phone rang. Seeing that it was my wife, I ignored the call and put the phone on the table. Your wife? Asked Mary. Yes, it's more than you think, isn't it? Asked Missy. I think so, but I have no proof. Bill, everyone makes mistakes, said Mary, looking directly at Jack. Maybe you can find a way to forgive her. Missy raised her head and stared at Mary. I backed into the waiter and handed him my credit card. Well, I've destroyed enough of your meeting. Thank you for inviting me to share a meal with you. Bill, let me know Jack. It was an honor to dine with you and especially one of my favorite employees. It's on me. Happy Father's Day. I shook their hands and walked over to the waiter's counter to sign the check. I didn't even have hard evidence that she was cheating on me, but I was already 2 for 2 sure I should forgive her. What's wrong with people? My phone rang over and over, but I ignored it. I pulled into my garage and was greeted by 2 whirling dervishes, showering me with kisses and hugs, apologizing for abandoning me on Father's Day. Girls, don't worry about it. I don't expect you to remember when it's my birthday. It's your birthday today, yelled Jill. She then ran into the house yelling at my wife. Daddy, we didn't know. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, snuggling into my chest. You must hate us. No, baby, I love you more than life. When she suggested last night that we go to the beach today, we jumped at the opportunity. We didn't think, baby, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm not mad at you. I didn't tell her I was mad at her mother, but that was my problem, not my daughter's. Let's go inside. I walked through the kitchen, ignoring the crying wife my daughters were berating, and went upstairs to change. Putting on shorts and a tank top, I returned to the war zone and found my wife sobbing alone. I'm so sorry, she mumbled. I shook my head and went out on deck with a beer and a cigar. It was a beautiful night, and I was enjoying the quiet, thinking about work rather than my wife when the sliding door opened. Bill, what's his name? I asked, interrupting her. I didn't look at her, and she didn't move further out onto the deck. Bill, what's his name? The man you were having fun with on Friday. My anger was building. I heard the door closed, but she didn't come out. She didn't deny it. That's when I realized I was about to go to a divorce lawyer. Almost 20 years of marriage gone. What a stupid woman I had married. That's when I started thinking the worst. How long had she been cheating? Was he her first? Did I know him? Were these girls even mine? It's amazing what negative thoughts pop into your head when you've been treated so badly. I decided to demand a paternity test on the girls as part of the divorce. It would not only be for my peace of mind, but also for Katie's embarrassment. Said I spent the rest of the night researching divorce laws online, and then fell asleep on the couch. That's how I spent my birthday. Next chapter. I woke up at a somber 5 o'clock in the morning. In my bedroom, I found Katie sleeping soundly, curled around my pillow. It was funny how peaceful she looked compared to how poorly I slept. I grabbed what I needed and took a quick shower. I managed to escape without waking her, but Jill was waiting for me in the hallway. How bad is it, Daddy? I sighed. As bad as it can get. Can you forgive her? I mean, she just forgot one day. Honey, she didn't just forget my birthday or Father's Day. She cheated on me. She sighed. No, Daddy, she wouldn't have. She had to, and I won't accept that. Think about it. The last few weeks she'd been acting strange. Friday night, after getting a tan and getting her hair done, she went out dressed like a whore. That's definitely not for me. She shook her head. Babe, she avoided me all day Saturday and Sunday. She obviously had either guilt or hatred for me and didn't want to be around me at all. When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? It's always a family excursion. What if it wasn't an affair? What if it was just a one-time thing? Can't you forgive her for one time? I doubt it was, honey, but look at all her actions. For once this weekend, did she act like she loved me? Daddy, you didn't see the look on her face when Grandma called her to ask why she didn't call Grandpa to wish him a happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and yelled, "No!" so loud we thought Grandpa was having a heart attack or something. "He's fine, Dad." Mom was sobbing on her knees until we lifted her up and sat her on the couch. She kept saying she loved you over and over. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. She thought she was going to have a breakdown. We calmed her down and managed to get her to call you. "Jill, I don't know what you want me to say. She doesn't love me. You can't cheat on your spouse and love your spouse. That's not love. That's selfishness. Love should be selfless." When she got involved with another man, she discarded me. She hugged me and cried. I'm going to assume it wasn't some random guy she picked up at a bar. She must have flirted or accepted his flirting with her. There should have been touching, all of which preceded the first time she had sex with him. All of these actions are a betrayal to your spouse. You can't be in love with someone and show someone else affection. Please don't divorce her. I have to go to work. I'll talk to you later. She walked into Jenny's room. I'll be sure to tell her about what we talked about. There would be no more secrets in our family. I wondered how much longer we would be a family. I knew Katie would be too busy at work to try to call or text me, so I spent most of the day alone. The only thing that made the day not quite normal was filling out corporate forms related to Missy's accident. She was due to be compensated for her vacation, and I hoped she wouldn't be too worried. I didn't know anything about her personal life except that she wasn't married. She came in to sign forms and fill out an accident report. I wrote it for her since she had poor left-handedness, and she signed it. "How are things at home?" she asked. Not so good. She didn't deny it when I told her about her affair. "Shit, Bill. I'm sorry. I'm sure you don't want to know my life story, but I understand how you feel. My ex-husband cheated on me while I was pregnant. I kicked him out before my daughter was born. My mom was furious. She basically called me a throwaway. Jesus. I thought it was odd that your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night. She was looking right at your dad when she said that. Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm not sure which one, but it makes me think one of them cheated. I'm sorry. Don't be. They seem happy, so they're free to live as they please. I, on the other hand, prefer never to trust cheaters. Neither do I said firmly. Next chapter. Katie wasn't home when I got home from work. She was probably having fun with her stud, and I was pissed. I got back in my car and drove the 2 miles to her grocery store. I saw her car in the parking lot, and to my surprise, I saw her sitting in it with a young man. When I stopped in front of her car, she noticed me, and I saw her yell, "No." She opened the door, but I drove away. If she was going to cheat on me, he could have her. I had had enough. I drove home and ran upstairs to pack a bag. I planned to stay in a hotel until I found an apartment. Before I knew it, Jenny and Jill were already crying and begging me to stay. "I'm sorry, girls, but your mom was just about to cheat on me when I caught her. She was in the car with some guy when I pulled up beside her. Daddy, this has to be a mistake. Girls, I know what I saw. She had a man in her car. Why would she stay after work and have a man in her car if she wasn't going to take him somewhere? She can't say they were just having lunch. There is no innocent explanation for her sitting in the back parking lot after work with a man in the car. Daddy, please don't break up our family, Jenny sobbed. Honey, your mother broke up our family. It's not my fault. I hugged them and kissed their cheeks. I love you, girls. I'll be in touch with you every day. I left them crying in the bedroom and went to the garage myself. As I was pulling out of the garage, I was almost hit by Katie coming at me like a bat out of the underworld. I shook my head and drove on. The next week was nothing short of pure hell. I refused to take my wife's calls, and for the first 3 days, she called me every hour on the hour. She must have taken a week's vacation because she couldn't call from the shop floor and had to be on the job site all day. She left countless messages begging me to call her. I deleted every one of them. After those 3 days, my mother, mother-in-law, both daughters, and Kathy's sister begged me to talk to her. They all said it wasn't as bad as I thought, but every time I asked them if she had cheated on me, they wouldn't answer. They all knew she was. They just didn't want to admit it. I stopped answering everyone's phone calls. I told my daughters I would talk to them, but their mother was not to be talked about. I had to hang up twice before they believed I was serious. At the end of the week, I met with a lawyer. I wanted to just split the house in half. She would keep the house until the girls moved out. Then we'll sell it. The lawyer said I could get more than half of the proceeds for the house, since my contribution to the down payment and monthly payment is more than Katie's. but I told him to just split everything equally. I thought alimony or maintenance was a foregone conclusion, but it turned out that since my wife makes enough money to support herself on her own, I wouldn't have to pay her anything. That was the best news I've gotten in a while. I wouldn't have to pay her to have fun with her lover. The only catch was that I had no proof of her cheating. The judge might not allow it and reduce it to irreconcilable differences, and I'd have to prove that we were trying to have a relationship. I decided to take my chances. With my attorney preparing to file for divorce, life went on. There would be no forced mediation or counseling. There would be no lawsuits for alienation of affection. There would be no drawn-out fight. The split was fair, and any judge could see that even blindfolded. However, nothing was ever that simple. What she could do was fight. When she was served with the papers, she unleashed the whole family barrage on me again. It turned out that she had only entertained a boyfriend once that Friday before my birthday, or she convinced everyone that she had. I was labeled as the bad guy because I wouldn't let her explain everything, as if any explanation would have been acceptable. My mother basically called me a wooz because I wouldn't fight for my marriage. My mother-in-law told me we were even because I also broke my vows by not staying with her during the hardest times. My daughters told me I had to stay in the family because our divorce would scar them for life. It was unrealistic. I had done nothing wrong, yet I was being blamed for the divorce. It got to the point where I asked my daughters to give their saliva for a DNA test. They refused until I lied to them and told them it was a court order. Kathy wrote me a letter that was mailed to my store. I read it, and it said she was caught up in the guy's attention to her. I say guy because the bastard was only 21 years old. They only did it once in the back seat of his car, and he was really bad. As if the fact that he was a loser was supposed to make it all better? She also said that when I caught her in the car with a guy, I told him privately to never talk to her again. It didn't matter. She cheated on me once, and once was enough. The best part was that because she gave me the letter, I didn't have to prove the cheating in the divorce. She did it on her own. That meant I didn't have to file for irreconcilable differences and prove that we were trying to work things out. Karma was finally on my side. She tried to resist the divorce, but when the judge saw the terms I proposed and her letter confirming the infidelity, he approved it. I would be divorced in 60 days, and so I found myself alone on an island of desolation. For refusing to talk to her, I was labeled immature and an asshole. It got so bad that my mother and my daughter stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I was on the side of righteousness, and if they didn't like it, well, too bad. I called my daughters every other day. They never answered, but I left voicemails telling them what was going on with me and asking what was going on in their lives. I didn't let them blame me for our lack of communication. I continued to make every effort and get in touch with them, whether they wanted me to or not. One thing that changed was that I started having coffee with Missy on Sundays. It started innocently enough when we ran into each other at a local coffee shop. She and Mia lived in the neighborhood and were out for a walk. I invited them to join me and told her about my travails while Mia watched cartoons on my iPad. "I'm sure your daughters will come around, Bill," she said. "They're young, impressionable, and living with your wife. There's no telling what nonsense she's put in their heads. I hope you're right. I just hope they're not too far gone. I miss them like hell." The next week I walked into the same store at the same time and was reading when I heard, "Hello, stranger." I smiled and invited them to join me again. "Is this normal for you, or are you stalking me?" she asked with a smile. She asked with a smile. She asked with a smile. "No, I live nearby and I like to have a cup of coffee and read on Sunday mornings. It's kind of lonely at home, so I come here." She stepped from her cup and we chatted about the neighborhood until we parted ways. It wasn't a conscious decision to meet every Sunday, but we did. I enjoyed her company, and little Mia was just adorable. The day the divorce became final, I knocked on the front door of my old house. My wife answered me, and it was obvious she was crying. She didn't say a word, just invited me in. "Are the girls home?" I asked. "They're watching the musical at school. I know why you're here. I expected you to come tonight." "Really?" I asked with a smirk. "Right, you waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "I knew you would beg and plead and tug at my heart trying to make up, and I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, and there's no way I'm forgiving you. Damn it, Bill. It was a one-time thing, one bad mistake." Why couldn't you forgive me? Why couldn't you find a way to stay with me? Didn't you love me as much as I loved you all those years ago? I laughed. Did you love me when you were flirting with your jerk? Did you love me when you avoided me all weekend and left me alone on my birthday? If that's your idea of love, you're beyond help. I never wanted that to happen. She sobbed. I never wanted to have a cheating horror as a wife, but here we are. She gasped and started to speak before I interrupted her. Kathy, not only did you break my heart, but you turned my mother and my daughters against me. I will never forgive you for that. It's your fault for being unreasonable. I got angry and said, if you don't make my mother and my daughters apologize to me and make things right, I will tell every man you date that you are a cheating horror. I will try to ruin every relationship you have in the future because you ruined mine. I don't need anyone else. Wrong answer. I guess I'll have to find other ways to hurt you and embarrass you. I stood up to leave and she grabbed my arm. It's not my fault. You can't blame me. Oh no. Did I cheat on you? I don't think so. You know what's really disgusting? You're letting your daughters grow up believing that cheating on their husbands is acceptable. Because of your behavior, they will go into adulthood, believing that you're a saint and I'm a sinner, and it's okay because it was a one-time thing. So screw it. I'm not going to get down on myself because some asshole made you feel sexy. I yanked her hand away from mine and said, rotten hell for ruining our marriage, just rot, slut. I left her crying after me and wasn't the least bit upset. A few weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. Got a minute, Bill? Sure, come on in. I frowned as she closed the door, expecting something bad to happen now. Bill, does the company have a rule against dating other employees? I hated it when she asked me that. I was hoping I could ask her out. It looked like I was too late. No, we have a strict harassment policy. That policy protects just about anything that can be damaged by a failed relationship between coworkers, and if two people can't work together after a breakup, it's their fault, not the company's. Good. That's what I was hoping for, she said, placing a folded piece of paper on my desk. What's this? I asked. My address and phone number. I'm expecting you for dinner tomorrow. Mia will be joining us. I smiled and agreed. Good. You're a good man, Bill. You deserve happiness, and I want to give you a second chance at it. She popped out of my office with a cute spring in her step, and I looked forward to our dinner. Next chapter. Hey, it's Dad. I hope you and your sister are doing well. It's business as usual in my world, except a woman at work asked me out to dinner. Well, anyway, I love you and I miss you. Please call me soon. Bye. I knew leaving that message would cause some problems, but I didn't care. I needed to move on with my life, and I was glad that Missy had pulled herself together, as she had. Missy was a beautiful woman with an even more beautiful character. Her daughter was very developed and charming, and I had already met her parents. I felt like I was finally ahead of the curve. Only 15 minutes had passed when Kathy texted me. I can't believe you're already dating. You're a real bastard. I laughed when I read that. I hadn't realized how deluded she was. To think that I would sit there and worry about her was crazy. Maybe some guys would mourn the loss of their marriage to a cheating wife, but that wasn't about me. At 41, I was young enough to find love again. Hell, I was young enough to have more kids if I wanted to. That was something to think about. Missy was already in her 30s. Maybe she'd want to have more kids. I knew it was too early to think about it, but being a single mom, those things were probably high on Missy's list of potential suitors. I'm sure she was looking for a husband, not a toy. The next night, I showered and shaved after work and dressed casually. Looking in the mirror, I didn't pay attention to what I saw. I was in good shape. No extra tires or love handles. I had a full head of brown hair with no gray still peeking through. I had a great job that paid well and had money in the bank. I considered myself a pretty good catch for any woman, let alone a young one like Missy. Then I realized I had no idea how to date. When you're married, you're always together and know everything about each other. There was no problem holding hands or kissing. When you came home after a night out, you knew that entertainment was just around the corner. The status quo was comfortable. Jesus, I had to relearn how to do this. I knew my wife perfectly well and only her. I could only hope that the next woman I did it with liked the same thing, or at least had a good relationship with her. I was afraid I wasn't ready to date yet, and regretted entering the dating scene so quickly. Next chapter. I knocked on the door of her house with a bottle of wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal. I figured it couldn't hurt to gain Mia's favor. When she opened the door, I was shocked by what I saw. Her curly red hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was wearing the perfect amount of makeup. She laughed and asked, "Do I pass the test?" "God, yes," said I before I could answer. She laughed even harder and took the flowers and wine from me. "Mia is watching TV. Go tell her hi. She'll love the bear." She left for the kitchen, and I knelt down next to Mia. "Hi, sweetie. I brought you a bear cub." She looked at me apprehensively, and then lit up the room with her smile. She held out her hands for the bear and ran to show it to Missy as soon as she picked it up. It brought back fond memories of Jenny and Jill at the same age. I realized how long it had been since I had talked to them, and missed them even more. "What's wrong?" asked Missy, breaking me from my thoughts. I smiled forcibly and replied, "Nothing. I was just thinking about my daughters when they were Mia's age." "Is it really that bad now?" she asked. "They still won't talk to me. Katie has turned them against me, and I can't change their minds. But I'm trying anyway. I leave them messages every day, and I'm not going to stop. I'm so sorry, Bill. I know this is terrible for you. Every day I know they listen to my messages. I told them about our date tonight, and Kathy texted me to tell me I was an asshole for getting to the point so quickly. I'm sorry, but that's not too fast, is it?" She bit her lip and looked cute as hell. "Maybe," I answered honestly, "but I'm happy to find out with you." She smiled and took my hand. "Dinner's ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce. Sounds great. Oh, I also have garlic bread, so be prepared for us to make out on the couch afterward." Mia giggled, and I stood there shocked that Missy was being so brazen. She saw my awkwardness and said, "Bill, we're both adults, and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of person you are, and it doesn't take much to get to know you better. I really like you. You're going to be a hot commodity soon, and I want to stake my claim early." "Hot commodity?" I asked. "Yep. You have no idea how much buzz the news of your divorce has caused at the store. Honey, your appearance in the market, so to speak, has caught the attention of many unmarried ladies. You're a handsome man in good shape, you're smart, stable, and we all know how you feel about fidelity." I was feeling pretty good about myself when I sat down at her table. "So I'm getting in line early," she finished. I took her hand and squeezed it. "I like you too." Mia, not wanting to be left out, said, "Sketty is my favorite. I like Sketty too." "The greasier the better," I said. Seeing a jar of Parmesan cheese on the table, I added, "You also have to have stinky cheese." She giggled and said, "It's not stinky cheese, it's parm. "Stinky cheese," I said, bringing the jar up to my nose and imagining it was the worst smell in the world. Wow, this is really stinky cheese. Missy shook her head as I handed the jar to Mia. She sniffed it, shrugged, and poured a generous portion over the spaghetti. Over dinner, we kept the conversation light. I asked about Mia's preschool class and her friends. She had no trouble telling me every detail she could remember. I was enjoying the conversation. After a while, I realized that Missy was quiet. She smiled broadly and just watched her daughter and I exchange a few phrases. She eventually started to gather the plates, and I said, "Let me help." "Oh no, she hasn't told you about her favorite TV shows yet." She laughed as Mia started telling me about all the best children's shows. After putting Mia to bed, Missy came back and sat next to me on the couch. I handed her a glass of wine, and she sighed contentedly as she put her feet up on the poofy. I love being a mom, but sometimes it's the best part of the day for me. Instinctively, I wrapped my arms around her. When she snuggled up against me, I said, "It's even worse with two." "I'm sure it is. Do you think your girls will come around?" "I hope so," I replied thoughtfully. "I'm doing my best right now, but it's still raw for them." She turned and kissed my cheek. "You're a great father. Just don't give up the fight for them." She sat down her glass and leaned back in her chair. "Bill, I've told you before that I really like you, and I'm too old to play the will we or won't we game. I'd like to keep seeing you, and that includes inviting you into my bedroom." I was about to tell her we didn't have to do that, but she held up a finger to silence me. "I know you want to be a gentleman and all, but you don't have to. What I'm trying to say is that I don't want to be your buddy or friend with privileges. I'm warning you that I'm looking for an exclusive relationship. I have a daughter to think about, and frankly, she needs a daddy just as much as I need a husband." I tried to speak again, but again was rebuffed. Usually these conversations end with the guy picking up the phone and running away. I don't think you're like that, but I'm giving you a way out. If you want to show your oats and experience the single life, I'm not your girl. If however you want to see if we have a chance at a long life, I'm your woman." "Wow," I said. "Did you prepare that speech, or was it done at random?" She frowned, misinterpreting my feelings. "Missy, like you said, we've known each other in a working relationship for 3 years now. The last few weeks of having coffee together have been very enjoyable. I'm a family man. That's all I've ever been. I don't know how to be single, and the thought of dating scares the hell out of me. If my wife could keep her legs shut, I'd still be a happily married family man. No, I don't want to play on that field." She smiled and took my hand. I continued, "You're beautiful, smart, and you make excellent spaghetti." She laughed and playfully clapped me on the shoulder. "I'd like to be your boyfriend. Consider me part of creating something good for all of us, including your little girl." We didn't make love that night. As much as I wanted to take her right there on her couch, I felt it was best not to rush things. She practically confessed her love to me and got very turned on, and I decided that for my comfort it was best to take my time. I received a gift from the gods when I received an application for a managerial position. I never learned the name of the brat who ruined my marriage, so I couldn't get back at him. But when he showed up for the interview for the night manager position, I recognized him immediately. I knew he would never recognize me, but he might have recognized my name, so I asked Anne to interview him and hire him on the spot. On the second night of his job, I waited in the parking lot for him to start his shift. I walked over to his 90s car and put a 40-inch TV I had bought from a competitor in the back seat. We sold the same model, and I happened to know that one of them was accidentally lost in a storage unit. In the morning, I timed my appearance to coincide with the end of his shift. I walked him to his car, chatting along the way about what he thought of his crew of guys. As we pulled up to the car, I noticed the TV in the back seat and pretended to be shocked. "Jeff, you bought a TV before your shift? We're not open yet." "No, Bill, it's not mine. I don't know how it got there. Jeff, I think we should go back to the store. Bill, you have to believe me. Check the cameras." I shook my head and said, "Okay, bring the TV." We went back to the store, and the kid was scared to death. I thought he was going to cry at some point. We didn't have night security because the store closed for the night, and we didn't need a night crew in the store. We had cameras everywhere and only one place to turn them off. Only the managers had the key to that room. The camera was pointed at the door to the room, but it was above the doorway to the stairwell. I had mentioned this to security years ago, but they never corrected the situation. So I easily opened the door to the stairwell, walked over and covered the camera with a piece of black duct tape. Then I turned off the security camera system. Well, technically, I shut down the computer that controlled the system. When I brought him into the room and he saw that the computer wasn't working, he panicked and kept harping on about his innocence while I called the police per the rules. When all was said and done, the guy was convicted of a misdemeanor and got no jail time. I was hoping he'd get a couple months, but it wasn't expensive enough for television. He had to do a bunch of community service and pay a fine, which surprisingly was more than I paid for the TV. With a felony on his record, he's also going to have a hard time finding a retail job. That made me happier, but still not worth the risk I took. True, the corporation had improved security by installing cameras in the parking lot. They were long overdue. He was stupid enough to never realize that I did it. He tried to blame the team for setting him up, but he couldn't prove anything. They didn't miss him when I fired him. On a brisk Saturday morning, a week after dinner with Missy, I saw her waiting in the car to warm up. When I parked next to her, she met me at the door and greeted me with a kiss. "Are we still having dinner tonight?" she asked. "Sure, good. I have something special I'm cooking for you. You won't want to miss it." I wouldn't. "Is that the tramp?" asked Katie from behind me, interrupting me. "Excuse me?" shouted Missy, fully exposing her claws. "Katie, what do you want?" I asked, getting annoyed. "I've been trying to reach you. Did you block my number?" "Yes. After your 30 messages about how I'm a bastard for carrying on, I've had enough. What do you want?" "I want to talk about girls. We need to deal with college. They can go wherever they want. I've taken care of the money for them. I'd like to be a part of it, but since you six them on me, they won't talk to me. They're afraid you won't pay for the school. Of course I'll pay for it. I still love them, even though because you can't keep your legs closed, I lost them in the divorce." Missy laughed. Kathy looked at her and said, "It's not my fault you couldn't forgive me for one slip-up, Huh? One slip-up? It was only one time because you weren't restrained. I dealt with you right away. Never mind. You're still supposed to be my husband. We should still be a family. You're delusional. You cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and my mother. I swear you better never date a man if I find out about this. You'll never see a second date. Nobody wants to date a cheating whore unless they know about your reputation and are looking for some easy entertainment. I turned and walked toward the store. I heard yelling behind me and turned around to see Missy pinning Katie against the car, pointing a finger in her face. "Stay away from my man, bitch." You threw him out and I picked him up. I ran up and pulled her away. "Stop it, Missy, she's not worth this kind of trouble." "You heard me, bitch," yelled Katie, and turned and walked towards the store. "Please go away, Kathy. We broke up and it's your fault. Yours and yours alone." I left her sobbing by the car. I caught up to my panting Missy and took her hand. She lifted her head and smiled at me, slowing down. "I'm sorry, Bill. I guess I was too territorial." "Oh, no. I like it when women fight over me in the parking lot. It's very good for my ego." We laughed and went inside to take care of business. Later that morning, I got a call from my mom. When I answered, she muttered, "Billy, She didn't finish and I heard a knock, but the call didn't end. I hung up and called back, but no one answered. I called 911 to have them send an ambulance to her, but was told the call had already come from her house. I feared the worst and asked Anne to cover for me as I needed to go. She understood, and as I ran through the store, I ran past Missy, who yelled after me. I ignored her and ran straight to my car. When I got to my mom's house, the ambulance was already pulling away, and I followed it. When I got to the back door's opening, I found that she was gone before the ambulance even arrived at the hospital. She must have passed out while we were on the phone. I cried as I sat in the lobby of the emergency room. I sat there alone and thought about the last thing my mom had said to me. What had she meant to say? Maybe it was, "Am I in trouble? Am I having a heart attack? I'm really sorry." The phone rang and it was Missy. "Hi, my mom just died. Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm afraid I won't be good company tonight." "No, I'll be with you. If you need me, please let me come." "Okay, yes," I said. I didn't feel like being alone, and I was glad she agreed to be with me. "I'm on my way home now. I'll meet you there after you get off." "Okay, I'll see you soon." I ended the conversation and went to my car. Instead of driving home, I drove to my old house. I needed to tell my girls if they wanted to see me or not. As I pulled up to the house, I saw both girls' cars in the driveway inside. I had no idea that the first words we would say to each other would be such news. Ignoring the fact that I no longer lived here, I entered the code into the garage door that opened and stepped inside. Katie's car wasn't there, and I was glad of that. I don't think I was in any condition to see her. The living room and kitchen were empty, so I went upstairs to the bedrooms. Daddy yelled Jill as I entered her room. "What do you want?" shouted Jenny, coming in after me. "Did you come to beg?" "Well, you can go to Grandma had a heart attack and died this morning," I said, interrupting her. They both gasped. "I just thought I should tell you this in person. Now I'm going to hell." I walked out and closed the door behind me. I heard Jenny yelling for me to wait, but I ran to my car and left. I headed to the little lake where I had spent so much happy time with the girls. It was too cold for boats, but the water was starting to thaw and was very calm. I sat down on the picnic bench and cried again. This time I cried not only for my mother, but for the loss of my daughters. The fury in Jenny's voice told me that I wasn't needed in her life. She didn't need to tell me to go to hell. Her tone said it all for her. I wondered if I'd made a mistake along the way, not with Katie, but with the girls. What had I done so wrong that made them hate me so much? Katie was the one who ruined our marriage. Why couldn't my daughters understand that? I don't know how long I sat like that, but I heard someone approach. I turned around. It was Kathy and the girls. "How did you find me here?" I asked, turning around to look at the lake again. "Hey, you didn't turn off the synchronization of our Find My Phone app." Kathy said, "Bill, I'm sorry about your mom." "Yeah," I spat. "Do you regret her death, or the fact that you turned her against me and she died without ever making up?" She remained silent. "Leave me alone. I can't deal with your shit right now," I continued. "I'll never forgive you for what you did to me." Our last words were her saying that she wouldn't talk to me again until I came to my senses and backed out of the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me when she hung up on me. I'm so sorry, Bill, for everything. I heard her walk away and Jenny said, Daddy, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being bitches. I turned around and they both rushed over to me to hug me. We cried in each other's arms for what seemed like an eternity. It's not my fault, girls. Why can't you realize that what your mother did is the reason we're no longer together? We're sorry, Daddy, Jill said. We just thought you should forgive her. She loves you. It's so obvious. Not enough to be faithful to me, Jill. I'm sorry, girls. I'm so sorry. We cuddled some more while Kathy watched from the warm car. Girls, I need you so much. You're going off to college soon and I'm going to miss you. We're wasting so much time. We understand, Daddy, Jenny said. We won't shut you out anymore, Jill added. Said, I wish your grandmother had a chance to do the same. Daddy, can we come with you? We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could get some pizza. Sure, tell Mom and let's go. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Missy's car. I had forgotten she was coming. Girls, it looks like you're going to meet Missy. Is she your girlfriend? They asked in unison, making me laugh. Yeah, well, I mean, we just started dating. Look how he's blushing, Jenny. It's so cute. They jumped out of the car and were at Missy's door in no time. They peppered her with questions, and I could see that Missy didn't understand what was going on. Girls, leave her alone. Show her inside and I'll introduce you all. They kissed me on the cheek and scurried off to my garage, and I walked over to a shocked Missy. Sorry about that, I said as she opened the door. She smiled radiantly and kissed my cheek. Your daughters? Mm-hmm. Come on, you'll be formally introduced. I wish I knew, dear. I must look terrible. I laughed and said, You're fine. They'll like you. Jenny, Jill, I want you to meet Missy. They hugged. Jenny, as usual, cheekily declared, You're super pretty. Jill jumped up and said, Good for you, Daddy. Missy laughed and I was too shocked to say anything. Hey, let's take a quick look around the house and then I have some things to take care of for Grandma's services. Bill, I'll order some pizzas while you look around. That sounds good, honey. You read my mind. Oh, could the girls? I shook my head and Missy smiled. Sime, I decided that I would wait until the next morning to call and report Mom. I'll write an obituary in Monday's paper and post the details of the service on Facebook after visiting the funeral home on Sunday. After dinner, we sat and spent hours telling Missy stories about my mom. My girls, not so innocently, added a few embarrassing stories about me to keep Missy more interested. It wasn't my fault the pier was wet and I fell into the lake, I swear. Before I knew it, it was 10 o'clock. Girls, time is slipping away from me and it's getting late. They frowned and asked, Can we stay the night? I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet. Tell you what, I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go out for breakfast, okay? If you don't mind, I could use some help sorting out Grandma's stuff, too. Sure, Dad, we'll help with whatever you need. Thanks, Missy. Do you want to go for a ride, or do you need to go home to Mia? She's staying with my parents. Jill jumped up. Who's Mia? Mia is my 4-year-old daughter. They both squealed, and Jenny said, Oh my God, I can't wait to meet her. Missy laughed at their excitement and replied, Someday soon, I promise. Okay, let's go. They're wonderful girls, Missy said as we sat on the couch shortly after returning to my house. I'm glad you were able to get back together with them. I sighed. I am too. I just wish it hadn't taken my mom passing away to do it. She snuggled into my arms and I fell asleep with my arms around her. When I woke up in the morning, she had a blanket covering us and was still snuggled up against me. I missed being so close to someone. I kissed the top of her head and said, I'm sorry I fell asleep on you. She moaned, stretching. It's okay, baby. You've had a very emotional day. Ed, would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast? Only if I can bring Mia with me. My parents have plans this morning. Sure, my daughters will love her. Since we needed to pick up Mia, I asked my daughters to meet us at IHOP. When I walked in holding Mia's hand, my girls rushed over to her. Within seconds, Mia was in their arms. They had her spun in the air, and then they began tickling her and showering her with kisses. All the while, she squealed and giggled with a huge smile to the point of yelling, I have to go to the bathroom. The girls said in unison, We'll carry her, and scurried off to the bathroom. I don't know, Missy. Do you think they'll get along? I asked with a smirk. She playfully clapped me on the shoulder and kissed my cheek. I hope they'll be together for years to come, she said. She was thinking pretty long-term, and technically we only had one date. It was a little unnerving, but I was sure I could handle the feeling. As we ate, Mia and my daughters chatted nonstop about everything in the world. I could tell in my eyes that Mia loved to talk and not just about herself. She asked so many questions about my daughters' lives that I think even my girls were surprised. My daughters were neighborhood babysitters, so interacting with young children was their forte. They knew all the hot kids' shows and movies, and Mia would eat out of the palm of their hand. They also got along great with Missy. They showed no hostility or anger when I met her, which shocked me. They refused to socialize with me for months after my divorce, but as soon as they met my new girlfriend, they immediately became best friends. I didn't understand it, and I would have to try to get some sort of explanation from the girls. After dozens of phone calls, starting the long process of cleaning my mom's house and a visit to the funeral home, I was finally able to sit down and relax. The girls came back to my house for dinner, and Missy and Mia went their separate ways after breakfast. Missy decided it would be too emotional for us and wanted to avoid the discomfort of having Mia ask questions about everything while we sorted things out at my mom's house. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" asked Jenny unexpectedly. "We've only seen each other a couple times outside of work. It's a little early to call it love." "Okay, Dad," Jill said like I was an idiot. "Have you seen those good old cartoons where the girls' eyes flutter open and they fold their palms at their cheeks while looking at their prince?" I nodded, taking a bite of my pizza slice. "Well, she practically has hearts swirling in her head when she looks at you and flaps her eyes." Jill said, before I could deny that she loved me. They looked at each other, turned to me, and said, "We like her." From joy that I would get to see my daughters, I went from joy to anger. I threw my piece on my plate, wiped my hands, and went to the sink. Leaning on the counter, facing them, I tried to calm down. Daddy asked Jenny, "Girls, how can you break my heart all this time and now sit there and tell me you like my girlfriend? What did I ever do to you that you thought it was okay to shut me out? Ignore me? Tell me to go to hell when I see you for the first time in my life? What did I do? Do you know how many times I cried, leaving you a message I knew you didn't care to get? Mom made us." "What?" exclaimed I. Jill replied, "It all started when Mom told us that if you thought you were losing us, you'd come back to her and we'd be a family again. We're so sorry." I turned around and Jenny jumped up to hug me, seeing a tear on my cheek. "Daddy, we're sorry. After it didn't work, she told us that you left us and weren't going to pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She told us that the messages you were leaving were just a ploy you used in the divorce to make it seem like you were a good guy to please the judge. And you believed that? Dad, how would you react sitting with her day after day and hearing her defend her one-time mistake against 20 years of love? We thought you were being unreasonable, and I was? Would you let your boyfriend cheat on you?" I didn't have an answer. "Where does the line get drawn?" I asked firmly. "Once, 2, 5, answer me?" They began to cry and we embraced. Their hugs immediately calmed me and I felt awful. "I'm so sorry, girls. I missed you guys so much." After each of them expressed their love for me, I said, "It's time to bring you home. You have school tomorrow. Don't forget to ask your mom to tell them about the wake and funeral. You're going to need some free time this week." We hugged one more time, and I watched with warmth in my heart as they drove away. I looked up at the sky and said, "You didn't have to go to bring the girls back to me, Mom, but thank you. I'll miss you." Wakes are hard for me because I always felt uncomfortable sitting in a room with a dead body. My mom's wake was especially hard. Throughout the day, I walked over to the casket several times and looked at her. She looked peaceful. I was glad she would get to see my dad again. He had died a few years before from cancer. He had wanted the funeral service to be done differently without a wake. He, like me, thought it was strange for people to interact with the corpse. Mom had it all planned out. I guess you get older when you think about things like that. She even picked out the coffin. All I had to do was set a time and day and take care of the small details of setting up the room in the service. I was glad she had done that. I was standing at the front of the room, talking to one of her friends when Kathy and my girls walked in. My daughters greeted me with warm, tear-filled hugs, and Kathy thankfully left me alone. After saying a prayer, Kathy put something in the casket and retreated to the back of the room where she sat down alone. I looked to see what she had put there and saw that it was a picture of Kathy and me hugging my mom. She was holding each of our babies in her arms and a smile a mile wide shone on her face. I picked up the photo she had tucked away to the side and reverently placed it next to her arms. It was the first time I cried that day. Later, the priest wanted to start a prayer service. Kathy never left her seat at the back of the hall. She drew everyone in. You can't be a family member as long as she was and not recognize people, and they all loved her. The protocol was for the immediate family to sit in the front row of chairs. My girls sat on my right and Mist on my left, but it didn't feel right. I stood up and turned around. I saw Katie, who was still standing in the back of the room, wiping tears from her eyes. It didn't seem right to me. My mom wouldn't have wanted this. Kathy was as much a daughter to her as she was a wife to me. I made my way to the back of the auditorium. As everyone sat waiting for the service to begin, I was noticed and all eyes followed me. I held out my hand to Kathy. "Come to the entrance. You don't need to hide in here." She started sobbing and wrapped her arms around me. "Letting go of me," she whispered. "Thank you." We walked to the front of the auditorium, and my Uncle John gave her his seat, which was next to my daughter. "You're a good man, Bill," Missy whispered as she kissed my cheek. It was the strangest feeling of my life to hold Missy's hand when my ex-wife was only a few feet away from me. I prayed that I wouldn't regret it later and have a problem with them. As we were wrapping up the day, I was already saying goodbye to the last of the visitors when Kathy came up to me. With Missy by my side, I wondered what Kathy would do. I hoped she wouldn't start a fight out of respect for my mother. "Bill, thank you for inviting me into the family today. It means more than you can imagine." She loved you like a daughter. It was the right thing to do. "Oh, that reminds me. If you want, you can ride in the limo with us and the girls tomorrow." She hugged me and cried. I felt Missy's hand touch my lower back in a bossy way, and I began to fear that a fight was about to break out. "Well," Kathy said, breaking the hug, "if you don't want anything from me, I'll go home." I shook my head in refusal, and she smiled briefly at Missy. "I'm glad you're here for him. You may not know it, but he's been a mama's boy. It's going to be very hard on him soon that she's gone." With those words, she turned and walked out of the room. Missy put her arm around my shoulders and said, "Let's get you home." I threw my keys in my locker and walked to the kitchen. Glad the day was over. Missy sat down at the table and accepted a cold beer from me. "I think things with Katie went better than you expected." "You handled it well," she said, while I enjoyed a cold Sam Adams. "Yeah, I'm glad I did. I really expected her to start something with you." "Well, I'm sure the girls helped with that. We just need to get through tomorrow and everything will be fine." I hoped she was right. I don't know why I had a bad feeling that Katie wouldn't be able to handle dealing with Missy. I guess I'm just paranoid. "Will you stay the night with me?" I asked. She smiled and took my hand. "You couldn't kick me out even if you tried." We didn't make love, but she snuggled up against me, and it was the best sleep I'd had since the divorce. "You watch me like a hawk." "I'm not going to abuse your gift and start a fight," Katie said as we waited for prayer to begin. "I know that I lied. It just makes me uncomfortable." She snorted and asked, "What do you think it's like for me? I'm an outcast here." "A whore." I frowned. "No one thinks that about you, especially not today." "I'm truly sorry, Bill. I wish I could make it never happen." I wish she cried and hurried to the bathroom. "It's hard for all of us, Bill," my mother's friend Jean said, patting me on the shoulder. "Your mom was a wonderful woman and we'll all miss her." I kissed her on the cheek and thanked her, glad that Kathy had covered my mom from her tears. After the funeral, we were seated at a table at my mom's favorite Polish restaurant. The room was full, and Kathy looked uncomfortable as she searched for an empty seat. I approached her again and led her by the hand to the table where I was seated with Missy and my daughters. "Kathy, we will always be a family. No matter the divorce, no matter where we sit, you will always be welcome." A tear rolled down her cheek as she sat down and thanked me. I don't know when I got over it, but I felt like I had finally forgotten the pain she had caused. Life went on. The girls went to college and Skype with me every week. Missy and I are still together, and I'm very close to popping the question. Kathy and I communicate infrequently, but cordially. She is also moving on with her life, dating the divorced father of a friend of one of the girls. He's a nice guy. I hope things work out for them. Some will say I should have forgiven her for the one-time slip-up, but I just can't do that. I may be a bad guy in someone's mind, but I can live with myself. The end.